On Christmas Day, 1994, someone slipped into the home computer of one of the most respected security experts in the United States. Not a bank. Not a government server. The personal machine of the very man whose job was stopping people like this. It was the single biggest mistake the world's most wanted hacker would ever make. For almost 3 years, the FBI had been chasing a ghost, a man who could disappear into a phone line, who stole secrets from the biggest technology companies on Earth and left almost nothing behind. They didn't have his face. They barely had his trail. And then, on that quiet holiday morning, he picked the one target who would chase him back. Stay with me, because what happened next is even stranger. His name was Kevin Mitnick. Born in Los Angeles in 1963, he grew up an only child, restless and brilliant, raised mostly by a working single mother. As a teenager, while other kids were memorizing baseball stats, Kevin was memorizing something else, the secret language of the telephone network. He learned that the entire phone system ran on tones and trust. With the right sounds and the right words, you could make a call route anywhere, bill to anyone, vanish into the wires. They called it phone phreaking. But Mitnick figured out something the others missed. The weakest part of any system was never the machine. It was the human being sitting next to it. And he was about to become the greatest at exploiting that weakness the world had ever seen. By 16, Mitnick wasn't just playing with phones anymore. In 1979, he and a few friends talked their way into the computer network of Digital Equipment Corporation, one of the giants of early computing, and copied their proprietary software. He didn't crack it with code. He called employees on the phone, pretended to be someone he wasn't, and simply asked for the passwords. They gave them to him. He called it social engineering, and it worked almost every single time. But here's where it gets weird. The more he got away with, the bolder he became. Over the next decade, Mitnick broke into systems he had no business touching, and the law slowly began to close in. In 1988, he was arrested and convicted for stealing that DEC software. He served a year. A judge, convinced he was dangerous, even ordered him held in solitary, reportedly out of fear he could start a war by whistling launch codes into a prison telephone. Now, that fear wasn't real. Mitnick couldn't launch a missile by whistling, and he never tried. But that single rumor tells you everything about how the world saw him. He had become a legend bigger than the truth, a digital boogeyman who could supposedly do anything. And that legend was about to get its biggest chapter. Because in 1992, the FBI came to arrest Kevin Mitnick again for violating the terms of his release. They knocked on the door. And he was already gone. For the next 3 years, Kevin Mitnick simply vanished. Think about what that means. This is before facial recognition. Before smartphones. A man on the FBI's most wanted list, living in plain sight in American cities, and nobody could find him. He moved from Denver to Seattle to Raleigh, North Carolina. He invented entire new identities, fake names, fake social security numbers, fake jobs. He even worked at a hospital under a borrowed identity, sitting at a desk while his own wanted poster circulated through federal offices. And he never stopped hacking. From the shadows, Mitnick broke into the networks of some of the largest companies on the planet: Motorola, Nokia, Sun Microsystems, Fujitsu, and NEC. He stole their source code, the crown jewel blueprints behind their products, reportedly worth millions. He wasn't selling it. He wasn't sabotaging anything. He was collecting it like trophies. But every ghost leaves one footprint. And Mitnick was about to leave his. His mistake had a name: Tsutomu Shimomura. Shimomura was a brilliant computational physicist and security researcher at the San Diego Supercomputer Center, one of the few people in the world who understood network security as deeply as Mitnick did. On Christmas Day, 1994, someone used a sophisticated attack to break into Shimomura's personal computers and steal his files. It was elegant. It was advanced. And it was personal. Shimomura took it as a challenge. He teamed up with the FBI and a reporter from the New York Times, and he did something the entire federal government had failed to do for 3 years. He started hunting Kevin Mitnick, and he was very, very good at it. Here's where it gets stranger. To catch a man who lived inside the phone network, you had to beat him at his own game. Shimomura traced the digital break-ins to a cellular phone connection. The stolen data was flowing through a modem somewhere in Raleigh, North Carolina. So in February 1995, Shimomura flew to Raleigh, and with technicians from the cell phone company, he drove the streets at night carrying a radio direction-finding antenna, a device that hunts for the source of a cellular signal. Block by block, apartment by apartment, the signal got stronger. They narrowed it to a single apartment complex. Then a single building. Then a single door. The ghost who had outrun the FBI for 3 years had finally been cornered, not by a warrant, but by a man with an antenna following his own phone signal home. At 1:30 in the morning on February 15, 1995, the FBI knocked on the door of apartment number 4. Kevin Mitnick answered. The world's most wanted hacker was arrested without a fight, surrounded by floppy disks and cloned cell phones. He was 31 years old. What came next was almost as controversial as the chase. Mitnick was held for years, much of it before trial, some of it in solitary confinement, while the legend around him only grew. In 1999, he pleaded guilty to wire and computer fraud, and in January 2000, he finally walked free. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. The man who had been hunted as the most dangerous hacker in America became one of its most trusted. Kevin Mitnick spent the rest of his life as a security consultant. Companies paid him to break into their systems on purpose, to find the holes before the next Kevin Mitnick did. He wrote best-selling books and taught the world that the weakest link in any system was never the computer. It was always the person. He died in 2023, a legend who had crossed every line and lived to teach others where the lines were. Next week on Lokedogg, a quiet museum, 2 men in police uniforms, and $500 million in masterpieces that vanished in 81 minutes and were never seen again. You're not going to want to miss it. Subscribe so you don't miss it. New true crime every week.